welcome Brad and Rob. Brad, first of all to you, mate. People are going on safari at the moment. In fact, they've been doing it for some time now, just not necessarily from Australia. What's the state of the industry right now as we slowly emerge out of this pandemic?
It's been a slow road, Simon, that's for sure. But in the last couple of months, we've seen an opening up to an extent, some green shoots starting to appear. Rob's had the good fortune of guiding a number of private clients this past season, and we're certainly seeing an uptake in demand going into next year and also 2023. So that's certainly looking positive from our American market. Australia is obviously still quite subdued. I think most people here are sort of waiting and seeing at this stage because a lot gets promised with broad brush terms, but not much has been delivered at this point. But that said, I think there is pent-up demand. I think there's a level of comfort now amongst the more adventurous clients to travel in the post-COVID world. Rob will tell you a bit more in due course, I'm sure, about what's happening on the ground in Africa. But all things being equal, it's certainly looking positive, and we're in a much better position than we were this time 12 months ago.
Rob, we're talking amongst the converted here, but for the people, your clients who have stepped off into Tanzania and into the Serengeti or into Kenya or into Southern Africa, what's been their reaction? It must be very exciting for you to be a part of people coming back on safari again.
Yes, Simon, it's a huge relief. There are a small but steady stream of people who have managed to negotiate the COVID regulations and COVID restrictions. So initially in the pre-planning phase, there's some anxiety about getting going again and working out exactly what's required for country entry requirements, government requirements, testing requirements. But if you read the documents clearly, and it's a pretty straightforward process once you've done it. Once they're in country, I would like to believe, and the feedback we're getting is that most people don't even realize they're in a pandemic situation. The beauty of a safari, obviously, is that just by its nature, it's social distancing. And certainly most of the countries are now open. Many have been open right from the beginning of the pandemic. So they've had a long period of time to work out their COVID mitigation strategies and do some training with their staff and their transport and logistics organizations. So to be honest, the safari these days is pretty seamless, and you won't notice too much different to going on a trip like that than you would have pre-COVID.
Brad, for seasoned travellers, they know all about Africa and they have no qualms whatsoever about hopping on a plane under normal circumstances and going on safari. What I'd love you to talk about is how well set up they are from taking you off the plane, be it in Johannesburg or Dar es Salaam, wherever you might land, to getting out into the bush and then returning you safe and sound.
The good news is, Simon, that nearly all, if not all, of our suppliers in Africa on the ground have vaccinated staff. They've got very clear protocols in place as to what can and can't be done. They've been dealing with this, as Rob said, now for nearly 18 months. So those procedures are pretty well honed. So, the only potential choke point is airports. There's streamlined services now that take you through very quickly. And once you're out of there, you're in the best place in the world to socially distance. So I think, of all of our destinations, Africa has been one of the more progressive in dealing with COVID because there's been this necessity to do so. It hasn't had the luxury of a lot of Western countries, for instance, where they can lock their borders and shut down business and provide aid or social sort of security to those businesses they've impacted. Obviously, in Africa, that doesn't happen. So, necessity is the mother of all invention. And, they've certainly made best efforts to deal with this and have done so very effectively to date.
Rob, in Tanzania, where you live, what's it been like for people on the ground, for the staff and everybody who's directly or indirectly employed by the safari, by the tourism industry, which counts for so much in East Africa and Southern Africa?
Simon, it's been devastating, to be honest. There was a complete collapse of the industry as the announcements were made and flights started to be restricted and movement started to be restricted. And that led to a whole reckoning of revision of business strategies by various businesses trying to survive, forecasting how long this would last. And of course, then on the ground, the industry in Africa is supported by an amazing group of local communities and their families who initially saw perhaps a reduction in income. And then as the pandemic dragged on, many of them lost their jobs. And it's quite likely that for a long period that they're not going to get those jobs back. So it had a huge impact on local communities financially and their ability to get by. And as a result of that, it also had a huge impact on conservation funding. Tourism plays an enormous role in Africa in funding conservation efforts all around the continent, and that took a massive hit as well.
Brad, it'll probably be the new year before Australians start to kind of branch out and we get a bit more certainty, as you mentioned, from the government about international borders and where we can travel and stuff. I reckon it's important for people who are going overseas again to think about this whole idea of traveling with purpose and bringing people back into the fold, particularly in places like Africa, where that your dollar is going to go a long way to supporting a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. I think certainly with repeat African travellers, they'll be a lot gamer or a lot braver to sort of take that step, Simon. I think first-time travellers still will have some reticence, but I think there is a core of people in Australia who are endeared sufficiently to Africa because of its similarities in landscape, obviously very different in wildlife, but it's one of those few destinations that you can go back to time and time again and see something different. So, I'm very hopeful that people will jump on the bandwagon again as soon as they can. There might be some reticence initially because of the fact that the airlines still haven't sorted themselves out and the government really hasn't given much clarity as to who's going where and what you can and can't do. But I did see something just recently about Qantas putting back on services to Johannesburg. So that's a positive. Obviously, we'll sit and wait for the moment as to, what destinations. It looks like there's going to be a staged release of where people can and can't travel, and that obviously impacts the potential quarantine when they come back. But I think Africa, of all destinations, possibly with the addition of some ski destinations looking to the European winter, will be the more sought after places that people will go, given the pent up demand that's been in place now for the best part of a year and a half.
Talking about first timers, Rob and Brad, I'll get the answer from both of you. First of all, you, Rob, what do you say to somebody who comes to you or contacts you via email and says, I want to go to Africa, I want to go on a safari, I want to see lions for the first time ever? Where do people begin and what do you tell them?
Yeah, so initially we try and learn as much about them as possible, Simon, because that helps us really understand what their motivations are, what their concerns are, where their anxieties lie, and it's different for everybody. It also helps us, one of the key questions also is where have they traveled before and how have they traveled there before? Because if we can generate similarities to their previous travel, to the likely travel options in Africa, it makes that jump a little easier for them. And then we start to describe the various similarities and differences between the different regions in Africa. It's a huge place. Every country is slightly different and offers something slightly different. And seasonality plays a big part into it as well. So we just start to really try and hone in on when they can travel, how they like to travel, what the makeup of their group is. And as you're well aware, we tailor make everything. So we can really be quite specific to try and match their expectation, both in limiting their anxiety traveling to the continent for the first time, but also making sure that it's a trip that they're likely to enjoy because of what they've done before or their objectives of doing that travel.
Brad, you've spoken to many first timers or people going on their first safari. What do you tell them?
Simon, look, if they're sufficiently motivated to experience incredible wildlife, incredible wilderness, and incredible culture, they will probably have the best holiday of their life. Now, we see a lot of families who do safaris with us, and hands down, it is the best family holiday, and this is based on firm feedback that families have ever had, because you're in a remote area, you're active all day and every day, and unbeknownst to your kids, they're captive and their phones don't work. It's quality family time, and it's such an amazing place. There's not too many places on earth that come close to it. There's places like Antarctica and the subcontinent and that does have wildlife, but it's nothing like what you experience in Africa in terms of quality and quantity, because the industry there is totally geared to that experience. So, yeah, for me, it has no peer. I mean, I am biased, but and there are certainly some other amazing destinations in the world, but I think pound for pound, Africa is it in terms of a natural experience.
Rob, the cultural aspects are something that I personally love, on a kind of a par with the wildlife and with the bush. That is obviously something that you are very passionate about as well, and we'll touch on that idea of every dollar counts in Africa, doesn't it? Because it is impacting local people, it is employing a lot of local people who can then feed their families.
Yeah, Simon, that's the beauty of a safari. It's really interesting. When we talk to people about why they come to Africa, it's usually because they want to see a lion or an elephant, or, the migration or some other amazing wildlife spectacle that they've seen on television or read about in various magazines and so forth, or seen on social media. But, interestingly enough, when we then post-trip analyze and ask people what their most memorable experiences are, often it's an interaction with a local person or a local group of people, and it really resonates with them. So one of the things that I'm absolutely adore is bringing people to Africa and other places, India and Nepal and some of the other places that we go, where there is a really strong pull towards the cultural interaction, and allowing people to meet those individuals or groups, and comparing their lifestyles and realizing that people are pretty much the same all the world over. We just live in different ways, and to some extent making them challenge their own lifestyles. So that's one of the fun things about taking people on trips, is it's an unexpected experience that most people really get some value from.
Right, if the pandemic has taught us anything, mate, I think this idea that we can take nothing for granted, can we? Like the life that you, Rob, me as well had, where you were hopping on a plane as required or as wished to go to Johannesburg or to fly into East Africa, with a massive fallout for so many people over there. I don't think I will take anything for granted, any travel, any plane trip again, and certainly any safari.
Yeah, I think, what this pandemic has done for us, Simon, is made us appreciate what we've got, and the potential of what we can have again moving forward. So, like you, I certainly share that sentiment. I think we'll be a lot wiser and a lot more appreciative of the opportunities that present to us, so that when I finally get back to Africa, which probably won't happen until the winter season, the dry season of next year, where we've got quite a busy season coming. But this sort of 2 years away from that continent's been two of the longest years of my life in terms of variety of experience. It's been good for the family in that I've been home for a long time, but obviously I don't earn a living by looking after my family. We've all got to earn a living, and it'll be nice to get back there. But all good things will come in good time, and it seems that the positive is that we're moving in the right direction. So sure, it may be a little bit different than what it was, but we'll be all the more appreciative of it when the opportunity presents.
Lastly, and talking about vaccines, the first world is largely vaccinating itself now, and the numbers are up everywhere. Rob, it's been lagging in Africa, and promises that have been made to African countries haven't necessarily been met, but in the months ahead, there is a big commitment in East Africa, Southern Africa, and up into places like Morocco as well, for populations there to get vaccinated with the help from Britain, Australia, the US and others as quickly as they can.
True, Simon. So the African countries, I think, were quite wise to start within the hospitality ranks and their health services, because those were the groups that were most likely to interact with foreign guests. And they had very little option but to keep their borders open as much as possible to try and attract foreign investment, because they rely so heavily on tourism to support their economies. So that's been incredibly successful across the board, whether you're talking about Southern Africa, Botswana, Zambia, South Africa, Eastern Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda. They've done an amazing job in vaccinating their health industry and their hospitality industry. Now they've got the bigger challenge of trickling those vaccines down into the small rural communities. That's going to take some effort and some logistics, but they're working very hard at it and they're making progress. So it's positive.
Very good to hear. Brad, before we sort of wrap this up, is there any overarching message that you'd like to send out to anyone who might be watching or listening to this?
Oh, look, I'd say keep the faith and keep the trust. Obviously, there are some good organisations on the ground that will take very good care of you, and we're in the advantageous position of having very long-term relationships with people on the ground, and all indications from our experience, and certainly with Rob's experiences this year on the coalface, it gives me great hope and great confidence in the fact that it's all up from here.
Rob, any last thoughts from you, mate?
Yeah, we often here at Epic, we often measure whether we'd advise a trip for somebody else as to, by measuring whether we take our own families there. And look, my family's already there. So, I think we need to encourage people to do their homework, seek interesting places to go, make sure that they see good organizations to travel with. It's all out there on the internet. And please be aware, as well as having an amazing experience, your contribution to those local communities is absolutely essential, to keep those communities going. So not only will you have an incredible time, but you will have an extraordinary impact on the local people who are providing those services to you. And it's a huge multiplier effect. For every person who earns an income in Africa, they're probably supporting between 5 and 10 other individuals. So your contribution as a traveller has a massive impact on our local communities wherever you go.
Excellent, very well said. Well, an exciting time ahead. Let's hope that we've got the worst of this thing behind us now, and that 2022 will be a much better year, better than the year we promised 2021 would be in 2020.
Indeed, mate, indeed. So look, thanks very much for the opportunity to have a chat, mate.
Good stuff.
Yeah, nice to chat to you, Simon. Nice to see your face, and hopefully we'll see you over here at some stage.
Well, I think you owe me a beer at Ndutu, Rob, so...
Anytime.
Thanks. Good stuff.